that's an interesting distinction to make between, like, if we're talking about, lower budget versus higher budget, the lower budget is more of like, there's more freedom to comment on previous conversations, whereas these higher budgets, if you're trying to, is that really the case that the broader community doesn't really want to talk about these things, or that they just don't see film as an avenue for conversation and more just as entertainment, and that's how the producers see it.
On the levels of making billions of dollars in 1 month, it's clear that an audience wants to be able to forget.
Yeah.
They want to feel some emotions. You can see that in the Marvel kind of, end games or whatever.
Right.
That they want to laugh. They want to be able to cry, but they want it to all exist in a world that's not real.
Yeah.
So that it never comes back to them having to think about their relationship with their mother or their son or their...
Yeah.
So it's obvious in the billions, if you want to make billions of dollars, that you should really live in this fantasy world and make sure that people feel that way. But if you want to live in the 100 million worlds, you have Parasite. So you do have an audience interested in looking at a complicated situation.
Yeah.
And sometimes they'll be like, yeah, but that was kind of lightning in a bottle. And it's like, it isn't really lightning in a bottle. It's a really well-made movie. And there are crappy blockbuster movies that should make $1 billion that don't make $1 billion as well. And there are, $50 million movies that should make $100 million that don't, and it's how you look at, or how you want to look at how things succeed. Because, there's a formula for script writing when you're dealing with studio films, but as many as good films get made, probably 2/3 are actually very, very bad movies and really bad movies. But for some reason, there's this dialogue that pretends that all those garbage movies don't exist. They go, yeah, but look at what, whatever's doing, whatever big movie's doing. It's like, I know, but with that movie, there were also 10 awful movies, No one's talking about the fact that Zack Snyder, spent $70 million to do more to Justice League, and it's still a piece of garbage. And that could have financed multiple other films, right?
Yeah, it's kind of a bounce back, stay positive kind of a, let's focus on what good happened.
Yeah. So I wish that there was more of a look at that there is an audience. There are people who are wanting actually these mid-budget movies.
Yeah.
But if the expectation is to make such a significant amount of money, then we're having the wrong type of dialogue.
Yeah.
I mean, Ron Howard once, when he it was like David Letterman, they were talking about Cinderella Man, which is a great film, and they were like, "Oh, that film bombed," and Ron Howard's like, "No, it didn't.
Yeah,
it actually made a profit, and all the producers, everybody made money. They just didn't make a ridiculous amount of money, and because they didn't make a ridiculous amount of money, it's a bomb." But he's like, it definitely didn't bomb at all.
Right. Yeah, you've mentioned in one of your previous interviews, I'm trying to remember which one, you were talking about it was with the MoMA. You mentioned that if you'd like producers to see that these regional stories that you're telling, these rural stories, there is an audience for them, and there are people who want to watch them. And do you think those, is that kind of what you're hoping to aim for in these, the $100 million budgets, being able to open up that door to still bringing in these more rural stories, like you were saying, but on a bigger scale?
Yeah, most of the United States is rural.
Right.
And there is not a lot of representation in the type of lives that they're living. I mean,
why do you think that is, though? Why is that not come to the attention of, if there's such a big population?
I don't really know. I mean, you see it all the time in series storytelling, like HBO's, Mayor Midtown or whatever is placed in a small, they will constantly put cop dramas and other, like, wherever they need the resources to be.
Parks and Rec.
Parks and Rec. Yeah. It's like they'll put those in smaller towns, but then they never really get at the heart of like the communities, really. They use, whatever it's called, stereotypes in many ways of certain people.
Yeah.
And there's an aspect of stereotypes that is because it's based off of some aspect that you'd be like, oh yeah, that's like, Tim,
But that's
but I do think there's ways in which you can tell. I'm trying to find this way in which can I tell stories where somebody or people in these rural communities feel represented, but can I also take on a type of storytelling that they will connect it? So with I Love You Now and Forever, when I wrote that script, for example, a lot of my thought process is like, can the two main characters be avatars for the person watching the movie? So that when they watch the movie, they're like, that'd be me.
Yeah.
That's what I would do. So there's not necessarily, I'm not looking for representation in the sense of, do I tell a story of a high school teacher in a small town so that he feels like, represented, or teachers all over the place feel like, oh yeah, they got us. Can I do the opposite and it almost be in a way a roller coaster ride for them, but it is them. Like they see themselves through it. They say, they say the struggle with the video gaming into movie transition is that when you play video games, you are the avatar. And so all of a sudden when they put an actor in that character, you're like, well, you don't connect with it because that avatar directly doesn't have an identity because the player is that identity. And so that has been the disconnect or the struggle of jumping into or having successful movies anyways, or video games. In this article I read anyways, that's what they suggested. I thought that was interesting. So can I write characters that are lovable, likable, but the person sitting in the audience is like, they're making decisions that I would make if I were them.
Yeah. I remember I watched your Sundance Lab on regional filmmaking.
Yeah.
And you said something that stuck with me since then, which is just start making things with the resources you do have, which is encouraging in a way, because I think a lot of times you kind of get in your own head when you're starting out and being like, who am I to start making movies,
Yeah.
Like what resources do I have?